Hello, YouTube. This is my continuous narrative about the special forces of Russia, also known as Spetsnaz. Some years ago, the legend of the Russian special forces, Viktor Blинov, died. In the Alpha group, this combatant had the call sign Berserker, which perfectly reflected his fighting qualities. Like the ancient warriors, he knew no fear in battle. However, outside the professional community, for obvious reasons, few people knew about Viktor Blинov. Let's look at his life through the available information. Viktor Ivanovich was born in 1950 in Moscow. His father came from a large peasant family, went through the World War II as an artilleryman and was wounded 3 times. After the war, Blинov Sr. worked as an electrician, first in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then in the USSR State Security Committee, or the KGB, or as people call it, the secret police. Viktor's mother, Galina Mikhailovna, died when her son was only 7. He was raised by his second mother, which he considered to be his own, Antonina Grigorievna, a woman with strong-willed character, and she had medals for the defense of Moscow and for valiant labor in the Great Patriotic War of 1941-1945. After high school, Viktor went into military service. He was assigned to the regiment providing higher officer courses, Wistral, following his father and uncle traditions. And Blинov Jr. became an artilleryman. After he left the service, he got a job as a locksmith at the famous Likhachev automobile plant. But the young man dreamed of something more. He felt that he was able to serve the motherland in a completely different field. He knew that the KGB's employees were selecting suitable candidates at the plant or works. But he did not wait for his turn to come, and in 1973, he himself came with a statement to the KGB under the Council of Ministers of the USSR. This drastically changed his life, although for neighbors and acquaintances, he was still a worker at the Zeal plant, as it was known. Blinov's neighbors and acquaintances were sure for the rest of his life that he worked as a locksmith at the Zeal factory, where he got a job immediately after returning from the army service. Even his wife thought so for several years, until 1991. In fact, already in his youth, Viktor Blинov was trying to enroll in an institute, college in Western terms, as a military translator. And he was offered a job to serve in Alpha, the special unit of the KGB of the USSR, created in 1974 to combat terrorism. I don't know what happened, why he didn't join, but in a sense, the young man was a hereditary Chekist, meaning operative of the KGB. After all, the stepmother who raised Viktor from the age of 7, she worked as a censor in this agency, the KGB. Blинov trained very hard. He was engaged in athletics all around, weightlifting, wrestling. I can tell you that wrestling in the USSR made men strong. My father was a champion in his military division sometime in the 1950s and made sure I trained too in the Dynamo organization. Well, Blинov was a prize winner of the Dynamo regional organization. In June of 1978, warrant officer Viktor Blинov was enrolled in the Group A of the Seventh Directorate of the KGB of the USSR as a junior intelligence officer. A Berserker, or the Berserker, became a special forces soldier in 1978. And the next year, he was sent to the chaos-ridden Afghanistan. In December of 1979, the baptism of fire took place. Viktor Blinov and Anatoly Savelyev were tasked with capturing the Air Force headquarters in Kabul. A platoon of paratroopers was given for help, but there was no assault. One of the first tasks of the special forces in Kabul was the capture of the Tajbek Palace, where the chairman of the Revolutionary Council of Afghanistan, Hafizullah Amin, who became objectionable to Moscow, was hiding. While experienced combatants stormed the palace, Blinov, two other Alphavites, and several paratroopers took over the headquarters of the Afghan Air Force. They managed without a single shot, thanks to the contact who left the Russians in the building. The headquarters guards surrendered, shocked that the Soviet combatants were both outside and inside. This operation earned Blinov the Order of the Red Star. And then there was a lot of very different type of work assignments, from the routine security at the Olympics 1980 to the capture of gangsters and especially dangerous criminals. The locksmith Blinov, like his colleagues, did not get out of business trips, if that's what we can call them. There were many of them. It was most difficult in families for them. How can one explain where the Afghan tan appeared on his face during his 2 weeks on business trip in the Russian city of Yaroslavl? After all, until 1991, when the USSR collapsed and the veil of secrecy was lifted, none of them had the right to talk about their real work, even to their loved ones. Hard, exhausting work, but so important and beloved to him. Viktor Ivanovich did not think of any other fate, any other destiny. In 1984, Blinov underwent combat training in Afghanistan. Viktor Blinov already had considerable experience in freeing hostages when in 1986, 2 armed deserters seized the Tu-134 airplane that landed for refueling at the Ufa airport. There were 81 people on board. The terrorists, whose names were Nikolai Matsnev and Sergei Yaghmurji, demanded that the airplane immediately fly abroad. While negotiations with the hijackers were underway, Blinov and 2 partners secretly got on board. When one of the terrorists, having taken a drug, blacked out, the Berserker and his colleagues stormed the salon, it took only 8 seconds. Matsnev, who was in a state of intoxication, was killed by machine gun fire, and Yaghmurji, who was unconscious, was wounded in the leg. But, as many believe, the main test in the life of the Berserker was ahead. We will get to the year 1995, but first, 1988. There was a business trip to Cuba. No details available. And then, 1990. Very fateful year, at least for Blinov. He provided personal protection for the leaders of the Lithuanian Communist Party during the period when the Republic was sailing away, so to say, from the Soviet Union. With the beginning of Gorbachev's policy of perestroika, hot spots flared up in the Soviet Union. One, then another, and the special forces of the KGB and the Interior Ministry began to be used as a fire brigade, putting down fires in their view in the year of 1990. Blinov gained the second experience of real war after Afghanistan during the collapse of the USSR, when he was sent to Azerbaijan with the Alpha. Allegedly, Azeri leadership intended to invite Iranian troops to the country. Viktor Ivanovich and his associates ended up in the Nakhichevan border guard unit, where the special forces were engaged in catching sabotage groups, arms smugglers, and eliminating mercenaries arriving in the country. On this business trip, Blinov got together with the guys from Vityaz, fraternal and respectful relations with the Crimson Berets, Krapovniki, and personally Sergei Ivanovich Lysyuk remained with him for the rest of his life. Among the Russian Special Forces, this unit is known for outstanding representatives. The owners of the Crimson Berets, members of one of the oldest and most experienced combat fraternities of special forces in Russia, and actually around the world. That's what they consider themselves to be. One day I'll describe the work of the famous Bratishki, Bros, employees of the legendary 604 Special Purpose Center of the Russian Guard Vityaz, owners of the Maroon Beret. In Russia, I should say the Crimson Beret. In Russia, the Crimson Beret is the symbol of the Special Forces, Spetsnaz, commandos, of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, MVD, and I talked about them in some other videos, but not enough. The 604th Special Purpose Center was formed in 2008 as a separate operational unit by combining the 6th Spetsnaz Detachment Vityaz and the 8th Spetsnaz Detachment Rus. Military unit number 3179, composition 4 Spetsnaz groups, a training company, 5 platoons, divers, paragliders, drones, UAVs, operators, sappers, and flamethrowers, though the support units too. But now, the year 1995, in the town of Budyonnovsk, in the summer of 1995, Russia was shocked by the terrible news from the city of Budyonnovsk, where a group of Chechen militants led by Shamil Basayev unexpectedly took over. They took over the local hospital, endangering the lives of 1,600 doctors, patients, and other residents of the city, herded into one place. The entire Alpha personnel went to deal with the event of this magnitude. When it became clear that the militants were making demands impossible for the authorities, the special forces received a command to storm the hospital. This is the official story, and it's murky. But I'll tell you what pertains to Blinov. The operation began at 5 a.m. on June 17th. Viktor Blinov was in the first row of stormers, though, who would storm the facility. According to witnesses, he took his time outwardly and advanced on foot to the very end of the building, shooting at the militants. The Chechens were in such confusion that they threw grenades at the Alpha combatant, forgetting to pull out the pin from the grenades. However, not a single bullet and not a single fragment damaged the body of the Berserker. He was protected by a bulletproof vest. Viktor Blinov reached the windows of the first floor and began to rescue the hostages, but it was not possible to get deep into the building. Each corridor was mined with tripwires and tightly shot at by militants from machine guns. The assault ended in failure, and the Special Forces soldiers were recalled. The Berserker was one of the last to leave the hospital, covering for young colleagues. Blinov himself admitted that this assault was the hardest battle for him. Viktor Blinov resigned from his position as the senior consultant at the headquarters of the Directorate A of the Special Purpose Forces, Purpose Center of the FSB of Russia in 1999. FSB is basically the KGB of today, with different functions in a way, but that's what they are. His service at Alpha was over. Among the awards of Lieutenant Colonel Blinov are the Order of the Red Banner, the Red Star for Military Merit, the Medal of the Order of the Merit for the Motherland, second degree with swords. But even after his retirement, Viktor Ivanovich was in excellent physical shape. In 2001, he passed the tests for a Crimson Beret. This is in his aging for Special Forces years. Viktor Blinov did not abuse alcohol, and he relieved stress after special operations with intensive sports exercises. Viktor Ivanovich Blinov could not live a day without training. He got up for a run at the crack of dawn, ran at every opportunity, even in Budyonnovsk, although it would seem what kind of training before a fight when all his strength is needed. His health was undermined by excessive physical exertion and the consequences of his injuries. Viktor Blinov died in February of 2017. The coffin with the body of the Berserker was carried by all the heads of the operational combat departments of the Alpha. Viktor Ivanovich was fond of domestic and foreign films about the war, but apart from his favorite films, there was the Wild Geese, 1978 British action film. The film is about a group of mercenaries from a private military company in Africa. He had watched this movie countless times. He was acutely aware of a kindred spirit in Sandy Young. Even outwardly, they were similar. Blinov was strong and wiry. Even at the age of 66, he was pining for a real job. And so he was invited to Syria as part of a Russian private military company. Yes, he was already 66. He was in excellent physical shape. That's what the description is. Although, like I said, he was trained by exercise. He was dissuaded from fighting on the front line. He was offered staff work, but the honored veteran of Alpha flatly refused. And so, in February of 2017, the unit was in battle, and he was wounded in that battle in Syria. The wound turned out to be incompatible with life. He passed away. I will bring you more stories about the Spetsnaz to the extent available in open sources. Still, it's interesting. And I'll also bring you more about Soviet and Russian weapons. If you like my research, please kindly support me through the links you'll find in description to this video. Please like my videos, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for your attention to my work.